Hey y'all, it is Dr. Sonia Daniels, and I am so excited to make this video. I've been contemplating and planning, and I was waiting for the right moment, and I'm like, here we are. So a little bit of context if you are new here. Welcome. If you are already a subscriber and have watched some of my videos already, welcome back. So, again, I am Dr. Sonia Daniels. I study people, patterns, and power. I am the founder and lead consultant at S. Daniels Consulting, which is my consulting firm. And I absolutely love the work that I get to do every single day. Now, being that it is January, it is a new year, I thought that this was the perfect time to really sit down and talk about all of the lessons I've learned and the perspectives that I've gained from year 7 of business, which was last year in 2025, and really be able to share all of the amazing things that I've learned that really helped me thrive as a woman in business, which I like to call a female founder. So, what I want to talk about in today's video, and I have my notes here with me just to kind of keep me on track, but what I want to talk about in today's video is really being able to reflect on what it actually took for me to thrive as a female founder in 2025. And I'm not just talking about financially, but I'm talking about emotionally, physically, mentally, and spiritually as well. I want to share a little bit about the what I call my fourfold method that helps me build a business without having to sacrifice my own capacity, my clarity, or my peace, which if listen, one thing y'all gonna learn about me, peace is important to me. And so this video is for business owners who really want growth that holds them as a person, but also really be able to experience success without feeling drained. So that is what we're going to talk about in today's video. Now, let me kind of give you just kind of a brief timeline of where the business has started and where we are now. So 2026 was the catalyst for me really getting put in positions to learn that I was best suited for entrepreneurship, but what I guess I call entrepreneurship by force, or being a founder by force. And so 2026 was 2020. 2016 was definitely a year, y'all. 2016 was a year for me. And so I ended up getting fired from a job in 2016. And I do have a video that kind of shares what that journey was like for me, why I was put in that position. And so that was the year I decided it was time for me to figure out my own career and really build a life that supported not only autonomy but sovereignty as well, which are two things that are really important to me. So started the business in 2017, kind of dabbled in it for a few years, but I really wasn't intentional about positioning myself to grow the business in 2017 in the first few years of the business. Now, when the pandemic hit, it really forced me to sit still and really understand what I needed to focus on to be able to grow the business the way I needed to. So I would say around the pandemic and then the few years after really gave me the opportunity to kind of shift my mindset and really understand the work that I needed to be ready to take on if I wanted to grow my business to be successful, which indeed was my priority and is always my priority. So 2023, it was such a significant year for me in 2023. So 2023, I was working full time in the tech industry at a software development company, was making a great salary, but I did not feel settled in that job. And so in 2023, that company that I was working at was having a lot of challenges. And then they ended up doing a reduction in workforce or a mass layoff in May of 23. And so I was not included in that layoff. However, that the timing just felt right. And so I was like, you know what, since they're letting people go, let me go ahead and make my exit as well, right? Just in consideration of the company. So May 23 was the turning point in the business and in my life where I went ahead and decided to jump into business ownership full time. The beauty of having worked at a tech company was that I was making so much money. I was able to kind of build a little financial cushion for myself to really be supported in shifting into the business, not necessarily having contracts lined up. But when I tell you alignment is so interesting and so beautiful, the moment I decided to choose the business, opportunities just started coming out of nowhere. So, literally a week after I resigned from the company, I got a bunch of emails for different contracts that folks wanted me to facilitate different projects for them. Again, I own a consulting firm. And so that worked out beautifully for me to the point where I was able to bring in some team members to really support the growth of the company and build capacity in 2024. So 2024 was my first full year of full-time ownership. As I mentioned, I had a team. I was able to bring in an intern, a PhD level intern. She was paid, by the way. I was able to pay her to really understand the inner workings of a growing consulting company. Now, 2024 gave me insight on how to keep up with the market. So, because I have a background in public policy, I like to read about economics. I like to read about business, of course. I like to study public policy, all the moving pieces that not kinds of, but a lot of moving pieces that really impact businesses. So, because I knew we were getting a new presidential administration, I was keenly aware that the market was going to shift very drastically because of the new administration. So at the top of 2025, I decided to do my own reduction in workforce and shift back down to a solo operated consulting company. Now, that wasn't an issue for me because I'm in consulting. I essentially sell knowledge. Most of it is the knowledge that I have from what I study, what I learn about companies, and how clarity works to really get companies from point A to point B, get them unstuck. And so shifting back down to a solo operator in 2025 was not an issue at all. But what I did not anticipate was that running a company by myself forced me to grow in a lot of ways that I would say I was not prepared for. But the beautiful part about it was that I learned a lot about myself. I learned about a lot about my company and just really learned a lot about life, having to navigate business by myself. And so 2025 was a year of really understanding how to navigate business in a way that makes sense for me. I really learned last year the why of the work that I do. I really felt like I found my purpose and a lot of alignment in 2025. I also made a lot of mistakes in that, and for me, mistakes are not drastic. I feel like mistakes are just a part of life. You either learn how to I believe with mistakes, you learn how to get data to help you make better decisions in the future, or you use mistakes and you don't learn from them and you keep making a mistake over and over. So for me, I made a lot of mistakes in business last year, all of which were, mistakes that there was always a resolution to it. One of the biggest mistakes I did make in business last year was, I think, being a bit too trusting of certain business partnerships. I got scammed out of $10,000. I had hired a company to do some work for me and they didn't follow through. But there were a lot of lessons learned in even making that mistake about how I need to do my own due diligence when it comes to being a business owner and really making sure that I'm operating in integrity in the transactions that I make in my business. I would also say last year helped me grow a lot in terms of getting over the fear of being perceived. So, running a business does require visibility, which for me, I think is important, not only for the brand of the business, but also information sharing, I think is key in business as well. And so, I was able to really navigate getting over the fear of being perceived. And so, 2025 was a phenomenal year. Definitely a lot of ups and downs, not only with my own growth, but just the economy and the market as well. And so, what I want to talk about is, again, my fourfold method, but also just how thriving requires more than just strategy and hustle. When I started the business, I knew that having autonomy was important for me. So, how I define autonomy is being able to have the freedom to kind of move the way you need to move through life, be able to make decisions that make sense for you in alignment with what you desire for your life. Like, that is how I define autonomy for myself. And so I've always been really big into kind of doing my own thing, kind of going against the currents. I just love kind of living life that way. And so over time, what autonomy has evolved into for me, especially as a business owner, is what I call slow living or slow life. I know a lot of the girlies, which I love, we like to call it a soft life, but I call it a slow life. And so that's really helped me shape my life and my business and how they kind of integrate with each other. I enjoy living a slow life. I have shaped my business in a way to where it doesn't necessarily center around hustle. I get to have slow mornings and ease into my day. I only work a few hours a day. I only work a few days a week. And then last year, I got to experience taking the month of December off while still getting paid for my work. And so that's such a beautiful reflection. And honestly, for me, I would say that was my biggest success in 2025, being able to take a month-long sabbatical and not have to worry about money. And so I really look forward to what this year looks like when it comes to even slower living, because I've built out my strategy to really prioritize a slow life where I'm not chasing opportunities. I'm really putting myself in position and alignment with opportunities that match the lifestyle I desire to live. So, jumping into the fourfold method. So, we're going to talk about emotional, physical, mental, and spiritual. These are the four folds of my life that help me be what I consider a functional, peaceful, happy human being. Am I perfect at navigating all of these areas of life or all of these domains at the same time? Not at all. It does require having systems in place. And it also requires a healthy dose of discipline as well. And so I can say I don't always keep up with all of these, but because I know that they're important to me, I'm often able to do a good job of when I fall off, I'm able to jump right back in. So let's start with emotional first. So, what emotional looks like for me in terms of ensuring that this domain in my life is healthy is that it focuses a lot on being able to navigate like being able to navigate how I relate to people, how I handle stress, how I refine my own self awareness. Resilience is huge when it comes to business. There's always something that comes up that requires a healthy dose of resilience to be able to navigate those situations. So, having this area of my life be really refined is important to me. And so, one of the things that was really helpful for me last year is that I really got into studying a lot about the intersection of business and neurobiology, which I made a connection that was so funny to me. So, when I was growing up, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a medical doctor. And so I wanted to be a neurologist. I wanted to be able to study the brain from a medical perspective. And so I attempted to go to pre-med, or I attempted to study pre-med in college. And it was not for me, y'all. Couldn't make it through math and could not make it through science classes, especially like chemistry. Just could not do it. And so it was so funny. I was able to make the connection that I am a doctor, a PhD, but I'm still studying neurobiology just in a different capacity when it comes to how neurobiology intersects business. So it was funny. I was able to make that connection. And so what it really helps me understand is that Emotional and mental health play a huge role in the success of business owners. And so being able to study and find an interest in neurobiology really helps me understand a lot about my own mindset and the way that I show up in the world, but specifically in my business. And so, two key areas I was able to enhance and do a lot of work around, some by force and some by choice, was emotional regulation and fluency. So, what was interesting was that around the time that I did the pivot and the reduction in workforce in my business, I also got into a relationship. And so, it was interesting the timing of everything because I felt like that was just a huge shift in my life in general. But now when I think back on it, I'm like, it all makes sense. And so through a lot of the learnings that I did in terms of like neurobiology, but especially like growth mindset, self mastery, mindset mastery, I was able to enhance my communication, which is not only important for a relationship but also friendships, but in business, enhanced communication is key. In consulting, a lot of my work is communicating, the way I communicate the work that I do to people, the way that I'm able to communicate the findings and results of projects that I do. Just overall communication is important when it comes to a growing and successful business. Last year I was able to really navigate friendships in a way that was quite different from previous. And so I was able to really build a lot of thriving friendships in my life. And of course, as I mentioned, build a thriving relationship also. And a lot of that also still plays a key role in how the business functions too. So it's all integrated with each other. Same way that I'm able to build thriving relationships, it also helps me build thriving partnerships in business as well. What I find really interesting in the work that I do is that it's so funny that my clients end up becoming friends. So it may be someone that I've met through like a business partnership, but over time, because we work closely together, a bond is built to where a lot of my clients end up becoming, acquaintances, friends, or we really just thrive in a relationship working together. And so that's been really fun to see that evolution happen as well in my business. A huge part of having a solid emotional domain in the fourfold method of my life is really being able to handle stress. Stress will eat you alive if you let it, especially in the business world. And so being able to cope with stress is really important. Having a toolbox, what I like to call it, having a toolbox of coping mechanisms, I think is really important when stress happens. And so I'm really in a place in life now where stress doesn't necessarily get me down. I might get frustrated momentarily, but I'm often able, what I call alchemizing or transmuting. I'm often able to quickly alchemize how stress affects me and use it as fuel to be able to navigate whatever the situation is. And so that's a beautiful place to be in business as well, because it helps me navigate stressful situations a lot faster, which is important in business, right? Because we want to move through those moments and not let them get in the way of how we show up and operate in business. So that's been beautiful to be able to navigate that place. Self-awareness is key. As a human, but as a business owner, having a high level of self-awareness is one of the most important assets you can have in your toolkit as a business owner. You always have to be cognizant of the way that you are showing up in your business, because you are the business. Like, no one is coming save you. No one is going to come to save you from the mistakes that you continually make in business. No one is going to come to save you from the bad decisions that you make in your business. No one is going to come to save you from not showing up in the way that you should in your business. And so having self-awareness is key to be able to navigate how you move through the business space. It is especially key for me as a solo operator of my company, because anything that happens in my company is either the result, whether a good result or an adverse result, of how I've done something in my business. And so self-awareness is key for me in the way that I have to show up. So I would say those are a few ways that I really try to refine the emotional domain of my life. Again, all of this takes work. It takes constant showing up on a daily basis. I don't prescribe to or don't subscribe to the idea that it has to be perfect. It just has to be consistent, right? There just has to be some pattern of me showing up in this way. Within my life. And one of the biggest things is I give myself grace. Every day I'm learning something new. And so even when it comes to emotions, I might be triggered by something that I've never been triggered by before. And so it gives me the opportunity to learn why I'm being triggered by this thing and then how do I move on from it. The next domain is physical. And so one of the biggest things that I have had to learn as a business owner is that energy management is the key to being able to thrive as a business owner. And if you are not properly managing your energy, it will become a constraint to how you show up in business. And so what this looks like for me, and one of the biggest areas of my life, is working out. So I know a lot of times when we talk about working out, we talk about it from a place of like, oh, I want to look good, which, listen, ain't nothing wrong with that because I definitely like looking good. But it also is important. Working out for me is important because I associate working out to moving my body. So what that means for me is that when I connect again, right, neuroscience or neurobiology to business, the intersection there for me is what I call the mind-body connection. Now, this is not a concept that is new. This is just something that I've learned about and how to incorporate it into my life. And so mind-body connection is extremely important because emotions are one of the things that kind of like, if we're not constantly moving our body intentionally, emotions get trapped. Emotions are essentially what I consider like trapped energy, right? So anything from like frustration, sadness, especially like a lot of those heavy emotions, stress, anger, a lot of those are required to have to move through our body in order for them to not stay stuck. And so for me, moving my body in the form of working out is extremely important. So when I was reflecting on last year, I did a little digging, and I'm a data nerd, so I love kind of just like assessing data, numbers, things of that nature. And so I track my workouts on my Apple Watch through Apple Fitness. And so I was able to really understand and reflect on how consistent and disciplined I was in working out and moving my body. So last year, I averaged about 10 days a month of working out, which I think is actually pretty great for me. But this year, I definitely plan to work out a whole lot more. And so working out for me was a means to moving unstuck energy through my body, which as a result allowed me to keep my mind uncluttered. So anytime stress came up, I was like, let me go take a walk. Anytime I was carrying some type of heaviness, sadness, frustration, or anger, I would take a walk. And so for me, that was a method of being able to move those emotions out of my body to be able to clear my mind for the work that I needed to do. So keeping that physical domain discipline is very important for me as well. The next one is mental. And so mental for me looks like clarity under uncertainty. So mental is how I would describe how I think, how I problem solve, how I relate to others, what are my coping skills, keeping my brain sharp through reading, learning new things, through hobbies. One of the biggest things I'll talk about when it comes to mental, when I talk about my fourfold method of just how I shape my life, but in relation to business, is healing generational patterns. That has been really big for me. And I think a lot of it came up last year when I started to really shift how I show up in the world, but like really show up for my business. So healing generational patterns with my relationship with money, my relationship with love, and then also my relationship with decision making has been a huge catalyst for growth and change in my life in the past year. And I can really see now how the quality of my life has improved because I took time to really understand where a lot of these, what I call distortions, came from in certain areas of my life and how they kind of kept me stuck. So, really, healing generational patterns has been big for me when it comes to like the mental health domain of my life. And I can definitely talk more about this in another video, but I wanted to mention that here. Last but not least is the spiritual domain of my life, which is highly important to me and one of the key areas in how I function as a business owner. And so when I think about the spiritual domain of my life, it really talks about like being able to find meaning beyond just like surface level metrics of my life. So really being able to find meaning in life beyond material things. I think one of the things that is often interesting to me in the business world is that I find that a lot of people start businesses as an attachment to something material. And so for me, I had to learn quickly that that is not the approach I wanted to take. Granted, nothing is wrong with that. I do believe making money is important. I like nice things. I like to go fancy places. I like to travel. And so it requires money as a tool to be able to do those things. But my spiritual development is being able to find purpose and meaning beyond those material things. One, what is really important for me in my spiritual life is my relationship with God, Source, Universe, and how to co-create in collaboration with God. So for me, my relationship with God is not necessarily built on obedience or just kind of like waiting and hoping that God will come through for me. My life is really built on I have these desires. There are things that I would like to be in alignment with for my life. And then I work with God to co create what that looks like. It's important for me that I'm always living in alignment, which was something I feel like I learned a lot last year of how it feels to live out of alignment versus what life feels like when you live in alignment. And so for me, I was really able to discover that living in alignment, there's a certain feeling that comes with living in alignment. A lot of what it looks like is just this like, there's a peace that comes with it where you're not feeling like a sense of urgency. You're not feeling an overwhelming sense of like rushing into things. There's a certain certainty that comes with living a life of alignment. Because the biggest piece is that I know that there are things I desire. I, make those requests to God and then I let it go, right? Another part of alignment is kind of surrendering to what life has to offer for us. And I think that peace comes from not being resistant to navigating all of the inner workings of living life as a human. And so for me, I think folks who engage with me kind of more on like an intimate basis often find me really relaxed in life because I'm not resistant to all of these things that I'm experiencing. And a lot of that comes from just living in alignment with what I know I desire for my life. A big part of my spiritual domain in my life is learning how to follow my intuition. Last year, I did a lot of work in learning the difference between anxiety and intuition because I think that's something that a lot of people do kind of have a hard time navigating that space. And I did as well. And sometimes still do, right? When it comes to my life. And so learning how to really sit still and quiet all of the things in my head to really understand how to use my intuition to make decisions and move forward, that has been a phenomenal area of growth in my life. Also, the spiritual domain in my life looks like gratitude. Gratitude is huge to me. I think gratitude allows me to find a sense of joy in the things that I get to experience in this life, the things that I get to have, how I take care of the things that I have, how I take care of the people in my life, really being able to experience what gratitude means. Also, being in awe of things. And so, in my spiritual life, or just in my life in general, having a really solid spiritual domain and spiritual practices allows me to be in awe of very simple things. One of the things I joke about often in my relationship is that I find awe in like the smallest things. So for me, every morning I get to see geese fly over where I live. And so it's one of the things I actually wake up every morning and look forward to, because it's such a phenomenal aspect of life watching birds fly over every morning. And I remember one day I was sitting outside and I got to see geese fly over, and it's like they were showing off for me, y'all. And so I literally started crying because I was like, this is just so beautiful to be able to experience this every single day. And so for me, my spiritual life has really allowed me to appreciate just really the smallest aspects of life that I think a lot of times I don't find other humans are able to do. And my spiritual life is really grounded in not only prayer, but also manifestation and meditation. I feel like all of those work in collaboration together to really create like a coherence and a logic to how to function in life. But also quiet time is important to me. And that's why I mentioned earlier that like slow living is important, because I appreciate being able to have time to be still, be quiet, let thoughts come to me to help me kind of navigate what my next move needs to be in life. And then also journaling, but not just journaling in the sense of like having a diary, but journaling in the sense of like, my life is so amazing, I want to like take note of it so I can read back on it and be like, dang, like I'm really living like a really amazing life. And so that's kind of the point of journaling for me. And when I think about my business in general, a lot of what are really the purpose of this business is to create a legacy for future generations. So whenever I become a wife and whenever I become a mother and a grandmother and a great grandmother, this is a foundation of a legacy that I am building for future generations. And so I think these four folds of my life work really well, because it helps me build a life not just for myself, but for the next generations that come to follow. And so I'm really grateful of the growth that I've seen, not only in myself, but just in the quality of my life in general. And so I think about really having refined these domains of my life in 2025, and how it helps me not only thrive as a female founder, but of course, as I mentioned, when I do become a wife and my lifestyle changes, then I'll be able to take these domains and then shift them and make adjustments into whatever wifehood calls for me. And then when I become a mother, I'll be able to take these domains and shift them into what motherhood calls for me. And so I'm really grateful that I've discovered this at this phase in my life, so that I'm able to continue to thrive as a female founder, as my business not only shifts and grows, but also as my life calls me to do different things that I'm currently doing. So I know I shared a lot, but I've been super excited to share this information with y'all and really create this video and share just how I've been thriving and navigating life as a female founder and a woman business owner. So I hope that there was something that you were able to kind of take away from what I shared today. And always, if you have questions, please let me know. I'm always happy to help and answer questions. And I look forward to sharing more with y'all in the next video. Take care.